Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Agents of Mace. Today we're continuing our X-Men Legacy watch through with Logan. But first, let's rewind to the movie before this, which is the Wolverine. Um, Depending on who you are and where you look, the timeline is very difficult with these movies because sometimes Days of Future Past slots in between these, sometimes it doesn't. We're going to go with it doesn't because technically it's set even in a different future. Um, so last time we left the Wolverine, which was our first like real gritty look at Logan and his story, which is sort of the perfect segue into this because I think Days of Future Past is not quite as dark. It's a little bit lighter. It's also mostly like the newer cast of X-Men mutants. So sticking with the like older original X-Men, Logan is the perfect follow-up to Wolverine, where we got to see him like actually deal with trauma, deal with problems, deal with not being able to heal and like what that does to him both like emotionally and physically. And that's kind of like the best segue possible into this movie, which is all about him having to deal with the fact that like he's no longer healing. He's kind of done with everything and wants to potentially end it all. So, on that gloomy, sad note, I'm Drew,
I'm Luke.
I'm Elisa.
and we are the Agents of Mace. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Agents of Mace. I already did that. Welcome back, everybody. We're here. We're talking about Logan. It is a really good movie that makes you feel a lot of emotions, which normally doesn't happen in a superhero movie. So there's going to be a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, and exciting for us. This was Elisa's first time seeing Logan, so we're gonna get to hear like fresh thoughts on the movie, having never seen it before. Um, I will say, when I was looking to watch this movie, I contemplated watching the black and white version,
Oh yeah.
um, and then changed my mind because I just don't understand it 100%. Um, but it's the version that I haven't seen. So I was like, maybe I'll watch it since haven't seen that one. But I did not. I watched the regular. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, so if you haven't seen this movie, there are two versions. There's the regular color version, and then there's a black and white version. That I guess their claim is that it fits the setting. It is a little bit more of a somber toned movie. It's a little
Mhm.
bit sort of loosely mirrors some like classic Western movies. So I guess I could see how maybe it would fit the vibe, but I don't know. Black and white movies shot today don't make sense. You filmed it to be color. Lighting for a movie with color is completely different than lighting for a movie that's black and white. So it's not my
Mhm.
cup of tea. But yeah, I guess we'll start with first thoughts for Logan.
I mean, holy moly! It's like the superhero movie everyone was waiting for forever. I just remember like my first experience seeing this was just understanding like they're gonna go for something definitely more um not kid friendly, like very edgy, like very rough, and the opening sequence gives you all of that. Um,
Yeah.
because it's just like for someone that's super into this stuff and then like kind of like eagerly waiting for this kind of version of Wolverine. I just remember like sitting in the theaters just anticipating this to start and then getting that opening sequence and then I'm just like this is it. Just buckle up like we're in for a ride here. And Yeah, this is one saw multiple times in theaters. I have not watched the black and white version. If I remember correctly, we did get that in Arkansas movie theaters, but it was like a very limited run. It could have, I think it was like a 1 day only thing, and I just couldn't schedule to go see it. But yeah, I would definitely love to check out the black and white version. Side note, this summer, Netflix will get the black and white version of Godzilla minus one. So solid Godzilla movie. So definitely wait until the end of the summer and we'll have the black and white version. But yeah, like lots to get into. Um, it's been a minute since I've watched this. I was trying to rewatch it before we talked about it. So there's a lot of interesting things like pick it up on like this is in the year 2029, which is kind of cool because we're getting there. I think one of the big items that I remember quite well was that like all the 18 wheelers were automated, right? They were just
Mhm.
basically like self-driving cars. And I
The
just
auto
remember those
trucks.
sequences of like just how fast they were moving, right? It was just like they could care less that any other car was on the road or a human, if that. They were just like going nonstop. And if you look in the world we're in today with Tesla and self-driving capabilities, we're kind of getting there. So it's one of those like by 2029, I'm curious if we'll have any automobile that will be in a self-driving only manner. But yeah, there's a lot of those little things that you kind of pick up on um, that I know everyone was trying to compare to versus like the current year when this came out of like, oh man, 2029, like, could we see any of this happening? So that there's a lot of fun elements in that. But yeah, really enjoy this movie. Watched it multiple times, like I said, and we'll continue watching it multiple times.
All right, Elisa, first thoughts.
Okay, so I did think that this was a very, very good movie. I'm sure that Luke saw that my letterboxed rating on it was like 4.5 stars.
Yep.
And the only reason I held back that last half of a star isn't because like I didn't think the movie had like earned it or anything. Because again, it's very well done. It's very well crafted. I think I read that this was the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Academy Awards. I think that The Incredibles was nominated for Best Original, but that's a big deal, and it is a good script. It is well directed, and this movie reminds us that Hugh Jackman is a capital A actor. Like this is definitely his best performance as Wolverine, and it's like he's
Mhm.
always been so good at this character. This just gave him an opportunity to show more sides of Wolverine that he hadn't gotten to do before. What keeps that half star off is that because this was kind of a violent and gritty movie, I can't picture myself going back to it a lot. Like it's very dark, and I still think that it's handled well. I wrote here that this is ugly violence. This isn't fun violence, and violence in real life is never fun. We don't like real violence, but in movies, whenever we're doing like kick flips and stuff like that, that's fun violence. This is bad violence. um, but it suited the story, and I found myself like really engaged throughout the entire movie. A lot of times whenever I'm watching like virtually anything, it loses my attention to find myself on my phone. I didn't do that really with this. Like it's a over 2 hour movie and I was with it the whole time. So yeah, I can't even really say I have criticisms
Mhm.
of it. Mason does. I could share those at the end of the at the end of the show. um I thought it was very, very good. And I even enjoyed watching it. It's just not one that I want to watch a whole lot because it made me feel sad.
Oh yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, it's when if you just sink into this one, it's an emotional watch, especially in the ending moments. And I've stated like I really enjoy this movie, but I do agree like I did not give this one like a 5 star, like a 5 out of 5 or anything. I There are flaws in it for sure. I know one in particular, like I wasn't the biggest fan of Boyd Holbrook's character with the Reavers. I thought that was an odd choice. Going into that, this is supposed to be, I get it's loosely based on like the old man Logan storyline, and I think going into this, that's what I was most excited about and wanted to see what they would do with that. But this is just kind of like loosely inspired by that, I would say. So some of the villain choices and that I was like a little let down by. I wish they could have done something a little bit different. A lot of these, you get into these. X-Men spinoff, when you're not really focused around like the core group of X-Men, it's always fascinating to see like what characters are they going to choose to bring in and why, because a lot of times we don't really get the why. Like when we talked about the Wolverine, like why did they choose Viper? Like why bring this mutant in versus any of the other mutants they have access to.
Mhm.
So in this case, it's like, you know, Caliban, like, and like when you look at like the story and how it's set up, like certain things that make sense, but it's almost like you wish you had those little bit of nuggets of like how they kind of cross paths and like why they would choose to stick together.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get it from like the beginning, the setup, you understand that like Logan's protecting Professor X and trying to get away from everyone. He's trying to get off the land. He's trying to, take them out to like the sea and just live on the sea and get away from everyone. And then you see that like Caliban's living with them, and Caliban has this mutant ability of being able to track other mutants. So it makes sense in terms of like protection and safety. But I
Mm-hmm.
do wish there was like more there of like how they came to be, how they got connected, how long they've been together. It's always one of these, like, as much as you love the story, like just think of all the adventures they'd gone on getting here
Right.
and like how fun it would be to watch those.
It's interesting because when this movie was announced, I was super excited because Old Man Logan is like one of my favorite storylines.
Mhm.
And when this came out and I saw it the whole time, I was like, "Oh, this isn't Old Man." Like literally nothing from Old Man Logan apart from the fact that he's old.
Old.
Like that's the only thing that is from that. And I remember when this came out, I was like, well, let me find out like what this story is because it is an interesting story. I think it's a really good movie. I wanted to read it. It's not. It's like not. It's based on the life of Wolverine
Mhm.
and characters in the universe, but it's like pretty much a completely new story. Um, which is interesting to do in a movie because like at least all the other ones so far have like drawn heavily on like one story arc, right? But
Yeah.
this doesn't really draw on a story arc. Instead it draws on characters and development
Yeah.
that they have gone through. But
It's like
even
they're taking some like themes from Old
mm-hmm,
Man Logan and shifting them, right?
mm-hmm,
Because it's like in this case, it seems like everyone knows who the Wolverine is,
mm-hmm.
right? Like when they see him, it's like you're the guy, you're the Wolverine. And we get more into later where there's like comics around
Mm-hmm.
the X-Men and like their adventures, which is it's basically this goes a little bit meta, right? But we're in this world where mutants are dying off. Like there's not as many going around, which is fascinating because we'll get into like the opening scene because that was one of the things I'm like, I was like, this guy's a mutant. Why are y'all like still sticking around trying to fight this guy
Right.
that's got like blades coming out of his hands? But whereas like yeah, it's a different impact, right? It's like Logan here is still popular, you'd almost
Mm-hmm.
say. Like people know him and they're excited to see him, even though mutants just aren't around anymore. Where isn't it in Old Man Logan? Like he's the cause, right?
Yeah.
He's like a
Yeah.
he's
He's basically like one of yeah, so he's not the cause, but he's the reason there are
but
no more
he's like
X-Men.
yeah.
Yeah, like the story of Old Man Logan is that all of the villains in the world one night team up together to take control of the world. And it's just
Mhm.
like too many villains. There's way more villains than there are heroes, so they get outnumbered. And the big one is Mysterio tricks Logan into thinking that he's being attacked by all these villains. So he kills all the villains. And then Mysterio reveals that he's actually killed all the X-Men, none of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
villains. And then it sets him on a path of like, I'm never going to pop my claws again. He knows he can't die. So he just like decides to live his life as,
Just
alone as
yeah,
possible.
away from
Right.
yeah.
Um, so this, I guess they kind of play that a little bit with like when he's trying to pop his claws. It seems like he hasn't done it in a while, so like one of them gets
Mm-hmm.
stuck,
Mm-hmm.
which is why again I think that's we're actually going to get Old Man Logan Wolverine in Deadpool because we see the same thing in the
Yeah.
trailer when he's in
Yeah.
the bar and his like claws aren't popping. So we'll see, but it's interesting to see this character that in the comics at least is pretty much built as like nothing can hurt him, nothing can kill him, nothing can slow him down. Like it doesn't matter what you throw at him, he's gonna come back. And sure, he has like rage and alcohol problems, but also his healing kind of like counteracts the alcohol problems. So maybe it's just rage problems that he has to deal with and memory issues. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this we see like glimpses of that through all of the other X-Men movies, but this is the
Right.
first one that's like, no, like, look, he can be hurt. He does slow down that, they don't, I guess they like sort of semi explain it in like a throwaway manner during the movie, but like the reason being much like Tony Stark, right? He has
Yeah.
the disease or whatever that's going through him because of the metal plating and stuff in his
Yeah.
chest.
So he's got adamantium poisoning,
Right. Because it's
is what
just
it
been in
is.
his body this whole time and his healing
Right.
factors constantly battling that. So then it starts to slow down healing other parts of him.
Just a little strange. I think they could have gone into that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was something that could have added to that versus I don't know. It's just that it doesn't make complete sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also like, I guess his healing factor makes him age slower, but like he
Mm-hmm.
would eventually, I assume, get to an age where like he would just die of old age. I don't
Probably.
know,
I just
like really,
yeah.
really far down the
I
line.
mean,
But
it's like, is he gonna live to be 3,000 years old, 5,000 years old?
right. So then
Maybe.
it's like, why, if that were the case, you could just maybe be like, hey, Magneto, can you just pull adamantium out of me? And then he's good. I don't know. I mean, it happens in the comics too. Like he loses his healing factor. He ends up wearing like a suit made out of adamantium to protect himself when he's still fighting. But then somehow he gets adamantium back. I don't know. It's a weird storyline in the comics, but this is nice to see that character that feels invincible
Yeah.
not be invincible.
Almost on. He's almost. It's like you're almost mortal, but
Right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Slowly mortal. Hmm.
yeah. But some of the scenes we get early on are like just so wild. It's like the opening is he's just like it's basically like he's passed out drunk, and then
Hmm.
people are trying to like take parts off of his vehicle. He's like
Hmm.
telling him to stop, and then he tries to like pop the claws, and that doesn't really work out. But then when that rage kicks in,
Yeah.
oh
Well, yeah, and
man,
it's
that
funny because the rage kicks in because he's like, "Don't hurt the car," and that one guy
yeah,
shoots the car, and then that's what sets him
that's
off.
what sets him off. Yeah, it's the little
Also, it
things.
like the whole movie begins with like an F bomb. It's like
Oh yeah,
it's like them being like, this
yeah.
is an R-rated movie for grown-ups. We're starting as
Um,
hard as we can go.
I think within the first 20 minutes, the back of my brain was like, which movie had more F bombs? Was it Logan or was it Super Bad? Because I know super bad held the record for a while, but Logan's got to be up there,
Yeah. Yeah, there are lots like not used in sentences, just used as like exclamations.
right?
Just peppered through conversations.
Yeah.
Now I got to look this up.
Most F words.
So yeah, Martin Scorsese's Casino and The Wolf of Wall Street are like up there.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, it
Straight Outta
definitely,
Compton.
that's number one.
Straight Outta Compton says it's got 392 F words used.
Gracious.
Wow.
Um, The Wolf of Wall Street. And this is just in terms of swear words. The Wolf of Wall Street has 715. Um, Man, where like now I gotta figure out where super bad because I know super bad I thought held the record for a while, but anyway, back on track. When you watch Logan, prepare yourself. There's a lot of F bombs.
Yes.
But getting back into like the moments I was referencing, it's like after these scenes, we see him like uh what is it? I guess it's the first, we joked about the Wolverine, like he basically never has a shirt on in that movie.
Hmm.
I'd say it's like the first shirtless Logan scene, but you can just see how messed up his body is.
Hmm.
And he's
Mhm.
just like pushing the bullets like out of his body. But there's so many scar tissue and what looks like
Hmm.
holes still exist, and it's wild.
Yeah,
Props to the makeup department there,
a
because
100%. I
yeah.
mean, in this whole movie, like we see him like dirty and beat up. We also see
Mm-hmm.
Caliban go through like
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of changes, and
Yep.
Patrick Stewart throughout the whole movie. Like the makeup department in this movie was on point for sure.
Yeah.
Um, well, kind of getting so like yeah, he gets attacked. He chases away the attackers. He drives back home, which is over the border, and he has like what looks to be some sort of like old oil rig or something in the middle of nowhere. And that's where he's living with Caliban and Professor X, who is now uh this is from a comic series where like he gets so old that he starts to like lose it mentally a little bit, and it sets off these like events that affect like whole cities. um so he's that has already happened. So Logan has to give him pills basically to like keep him from having these seizures that set off his psychic abilities. And the relationship between Charles and Logan in this movie is probably the best relationship between Charles and anyone in any of these X-Men movies. Like they just have such a nice relationship that's so it's sad to watch, but
Mm-hmm.
also you're like, oh, but they really care about each other. And it's nice because that's like Logan's whole thing, right? It's like he doesn't ever want to get too close to people, but he
Yeah.
clearly is close to Professor X.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And Professor X gets an F bomb of his very own.
Yep. That's what I
Sure
was about to say.
does.
So much
Mhm.
so that yeah, he's just like F you, Logan.
I was going through like the trivia on IMDb, and one of the things that they mentioned was that gosh, I know his name. Guy who plays Professor X. I know his name.
Patrick
Patrick, yes,
Stewart.
Patrick Stewart. Um, it said that he had apparently had the exact same weight his entire adult life since he was a teenager, and he had never like gained or lost any significant amount of weight. And for this, he had to like on purpose lose like 20 pounds to look sickly. And so he just
Mhm.
kind of like, huh, this is going to be a challenge for me as an actor. I don't know how somebody goes throughout their whole life and just stays the exact same,
Right.
no matter what
Right.
you eat or how much you exercise. You're just like, no,
Yeah, that's
I
just
got
Patrick
this.
Stewart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's the same. Uh he is so good at this movie. I
He
feel
is.
like they underuse him in all of the other X-Men movies.
Yeah.
And then we get him in this movie and he kills it the whole time. Um
wonder if, yeah, I mean, the reasons around that, I'm always wonder if it's just like if they're fearful, like it's just too much, like some, very well-known actor, but like outshining everyone else, or like having more attention there. Like it, but again, this goes. I can't remember if I thought I asked this in the last episode, but it was like, why did we never get a solo Professor X movie? It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I think that's
Patrick
just like,
Stewart's pretty big star. Like you would think we could have gotten a spin-off solo movie.
yeah, I think he just doesn't have enough for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like Professor X's whole thing is that he builds this team, and then every time he does anything, realistically, it's like to assist the team as opposed
Yeah,
to
he
like
is more
him
of
doing
like
stuff
in the
by himself.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can be like, okay, you need to go here and look for this person,
Hmm.
and I'm just gonna stay here and I'll communicate if anything happens.
Right. Mentally from afar.
Yeah, yeah.
The one thing that I do wish that we got in this movie was more explanation of what happened to anybody else.
Yeah.
Like we get a moment at one point where they meet a doctor and one of the guys is like, this is the guy that, got rid of most of your kind. But it's like, what does that mean? Like, what happened to Magneto? What happened
Mm.
to the rest of the X-Men? You know, is in this universe, did the Dark Phoenix happen and
Mm-hmm.
Logan killed Jean or not? Did that not happen? And in this universe, Jean and Scott are somewhere else. Are they up on the moon
Right.
base? Like, I just wish they make mention of it a couple times that like mutants, there haven't been mutants born in a long time, and there's less mutants on Earth, but they never say like we're the last three. They
Right.
very clearly leave it so you know that there are other mutants out there. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
who is it? Why aren't you with them or looking for them or trying to help them? Like, especially with Caliban and Professor X,
Yeah.
like two people who are literally designed to find
Just
other
yeah.
mutants.
Don't they like say, or at least like imply, that Professor accidentally killed a bunch of X-Men, maybe all of them, with his like mind thing that he does?
His seizure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
I feel like they said that. So
Well,
maybe there's not any X-Men left, but there are still mutants.
yeah. Yeah, they mentioned his like first like the big seizure that he has twice
mm-hmm.
in the movie, and like that's sort of what happens to him when they're in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Um
There's also no like insight into like major villains. Like, could a bunch of mutants have been? Was there a war?
mhm.
You know, um, yeah. Did any villain that we never got to see like make an appearance at some point, and then there was like a big war? So we just know mutants are extinct, but like how many could have died off be through battle in some
Right.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
versus just like one particular seizure event.
Right. Yeah, and to your point, the villains that we get in this are X-Men villains, but
Mhm.
not quite in the way. Like I'll do better this week. I'll be sure to post this photo. But essentially there's like a group that is starting to track Logan. When
Mhm.
he's in town, he buys medicine for Professor X. He comes out here. Then the villain shows up, and they're the Reavers, which are an X-Men group, or a group that fight against the X-Men. The Reavers are basically like cyborg people, but in the comics, they're like cyberpunk cyborg people. Like
Yeah.
there's a guy called Bone Crusher who's literally like a tank. Like his top half is a person, his bottom half is like tank treads. And there are concept photos for Logan for the Reavers, and one of them is a version of that. It's like a guy who doesn't have the bottom of his legs, and
Yeah.
he's like strapped into this machine so that he has tank treads instead of legs. And it's like, if you're going to introduce the Reavers, why not introduce the Reavers. Like, why not have that in this movie? I don't think it would have been too out there because like I said, when I post the photos, you'll see it's like even in the photos, it's not outside the realm of possibility. You know, the way that they've drawn the character, it's like, oh, that's believable that like he doesn't have legs, so he sits down and they strap him into this machine that lets him drive these tank treads instead. You know, we're sure in the comics it's just like a guy's top half bolted to a tank. So it's like, yeah, that's not believable. But I feel like they say the Reavers in this movie as if people watching the movie are supposed to know who or what that is, but
Mhm.
then they're not even, 50% of the way to looking or acting like the Reavers in the
But
comics.
yeah.
So it's like, you kind of took the wind out of their sails before you could even really introduce them as villains. Now they're very clearly just here to be like nameless, faceless goons that Wolverine can decapitate to continue the story. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the whole setup that it just feels like it just feels like you're just leaning too heavy on the fact that now you can show Wolverine can use his claws and like take off arms, like limbs.
mhm,
And that's why instead of like fighting mutants, we're just gonna fight enhanced humans, but can still lose a leg or an arm.
right. Which, funnily enough, it does seem like every time he cuts someone arm or leg off, it's like the arm or leg that wasn't a robot arm or leg. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, they can just replace that, I guess. Um, well, to kind of move the story forward, Logan runs into a woman who basically says, like, I need your help. I know you're the Wolverine. Uh, he's like, no, thanks. He's basically running like a limo service to save up money to buy this boat so he and Professor X can go live on this boat. Um, this woman has a little girl with her, and the little girl is always mean mugging Logan whenever she sees him. Finally, he meets her. She's like, look, you need to help us. I'll give you all of this money if you help us. And so he's like, okay, well, I need the money. So he's thinking about helping them. When he goes back, because she texts him, like, hey, meet us. You're going to meet us to pick us up. He goes back there. She's dead. The little girl's gone. The money's gone. But he does find the phone, the woman's phone. So he gets back in the car. He drives back. Surprise, surprise. Little girl hid herself in the trunk of the car, so she's back there with them at Logan's like hideout. um Caliban seems like I could never really tell what he was to Wolverine, because he was a bad guy that then at some point flipped, but just sort of watches Professor X for Logan while Logan goes and works all day.
Again, there needed to be a little bit more setup there.
Yeah,
Like,
even if it had been like we've been running for blank
mhm.
years or something, because I feel like the only explanation we get of what Caliban did before now is at one point when one of the Reavers is like, "Yeah, you used to help us find mutants, and then you flipped on us,"
Mhm.
and that's the end of the explanation
Yeah.
of what he used to do.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah,
so few questions about it though. I was just like, Wolverine has a giant that takes care of Professor X. Got it. Let's go.
And he can't step into the light.
Can't step into the light.
nope.
uh we get to meet Laura, who doesn't speak, but communicates with Professor X. And Professor X is like, we have to help Laura. We have to help Laura. At this point, Logan is doing pretty much everything he can to forget that Laura is there. The Reavers show up. They like break down the fence. They're coming to get Laura. Logan is not 100% sure why they're there. So he's like, I'm just going to grab Professor X and we're going to leave. He doesn't care about Caliban. He doesn't care about Laura. He's just like, I'm putting Professor in the car and we're driving out of here. I felt bad for Caliban in that point because it was like,
Yeah,
well, I get that you don't know who Laura is or why you need to care about her, but Caliban lives with you. Like, why are
right.
you just ditching him the first chance you get? Especially if he can track mutants. Like, you think that, well, if they catch
You would think
him,
so, but I think like in that moment, Logan's just so irritated. He's like, "You couldn't tell me they were coming." He was like, "They're not mutants. Like I can only track mutants." So at that, Logan's probably thinking like, "Well, what good are you really then? Like,
yeah,
if all these people are like, if mutants are pretty much extinct, then only humans are going to come after us. So like, you're just in
no
my way."
help. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's Logan. He's like, "Everyone's just in my way. I know what my mission is. Like, y'all just let me get out of here."
Well, this was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie when Laura's like eating the cereal
Hmm.
while the Reavers are like walking up behind her, and she very clearly knows they're there, but she's still taking bites of the cereal, which I just thought was funny. It's like she has her priorities. She wanted
Yeah.
those frosted flakes. Uh, and then we don't see it, but we hear it, right? That we like go back outside, we see them all talking outside, and then we hear the people inside like screaming and shooting their
Hmm.
guns, and then Laura just walks out holding the big guy's head. And I was like, this is the best. Like it's like my favorite scene in the movie for
Yep.
sure.
Where did they get this kid? Like, this is like an unbelievable performance from this little girl. She's so like stern and kind of creepy throughout the whole thing. Um, but yeah, she was so
Yeah.
good in this role.
Like just the moments of her just eating breakfast, but being very protective of her things.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's just like her little movements, of like how she would just lay her hand on her backpack of like, "This is mine.
Hmm.
Don't touch it. Leave me alone. Let me eat." Um, this is her first uh movie appearance. Prior to Logan, she was on a TV series called The Refugees. That was 2014 to 2015. So yeah.
Here's my ask for
Hmm.
Disney Marvel is to bring her back as X-23 and run the X-23 like comic series as either a movie or
Mm.
a episodic TV show or something. Basically, that story is laid out where she finds out that there are six other clones of her. She's already a clone. So then there's six clones of her that all have varying abilities. So like some of them can heal, some of them have claws. There's one that doesn't have anything
Hmm.
and also is the only one that doesn't have a heightened growth hormone or whatever. So like all of them are her age. She's usually in the comics X-23 is like in her 20s.
Hmm.
Um but then when she meets the clones, she's fighting most of them. The one that doesn't have the growth hormone in her and also doesn't appear to have any abilities is the one that ends up like switching sides and joining Laura while she's
Hmm.
fighting all these clones of herself. That version turns into Honey Badger, which is my like
Yeah.
new favorite comic book hero. And I wish that if I don't remember the actress's name, but if she could have a sister and when she's in her like late teens, early 20s, they do an X-23 series where her sister plays Honey Badger. I feel like they would
Mm.
be so good.
Her name's she goes by Daphne Keene.
That's right, Daphne.
She'll turn 20 next year.
All right,
So
Marvel,
I mean,
get on it.
there you
Does she have a sister?
go.
She has to have a
Doesn't
little
say
sister.
doesn't say anything about siblings.
Or I guess they could find someone that looks like she did when she was in Logan. I feel like that's going to be the hard part of having anything to do with clones is like we saw
Yeah.
her when she was young, so it'll be
Right.
difficult to make me believe that someone that doesn't look like her young
Yeah.
is supposed to be her young. But
She's also part of the new Star Wars series,
oh yeah, and acolytes, right?
The Acolyte. Yeah.
Well, she is both the comedic element in this movie and
Yeah.
also a like really good representation of Wolverine, right? Like she
Yeah.
has her like rage that she, it's funny when she yells, like especially when they both are yelling together. There's like a couple parts when they're fighting together where Wolverine is screaming and she is screaming, and it's just funny to hear the difference between, a man in his what when he filmed this, he's in his 50s, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Think
a girl
so.
who's like 10. So them screaming is just very different. But I
Yeah.
feel like
12.
12, okay.
Unless, well,
She
I mean, this came out in 2017, but yeah, so she had to be like in the 10, 11, 12
mhm.
whenever they actually filmed it. But
But she just like leans so hard into her character, and it's so
yeah.
good every time she's
Yeah.
on screen.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Hugh Jackman said she's the only actor who ever left a mark on him whenever they were like doing a fight scene. He said she's the only one who actually ever beat him up.
I believe it. They basically have to like escape, right? And Logan's finally like, all right, I'm gonna help Laura get out of here. I'm not gonna leave her. So he goes into rage mode. He helps her dispatch most people. Um, and then they drive. There's like it's a little goofy, the chase scene in the car, but whatever. Um, they drive away, and then there's a train that's like 700 miles long that separates them, and it's so they're good. They can escape without being followed. Um, then it's pretty much just like fun road trip, right? It's not fun, I guess, but it's road trip with
Gas
Yeah.
station snacks.
yeah. She steals some stuff from the gas station. Logan goes in, is like, no, you can't steal stuff. And you can't kill this guy because he told you
Oh,
can't steal
yeah.
stuff. And then immediately steals a phone charger and the sunglasses.
Yeah. Uh, and he asked, he's like, "Do you have phone chargers?"
Yeah. And the guy was
For
like, yeah.
sale. He specifies for sale and then just takes one without paying for it.
Oh
He
man.
uses the phone charger to charge the phone and basically learns that Laura is part of basically like a Weapon X program,
Yeah.
where they're growing children with different DNA from, we're presuming, from different mutants, um, to like raise them with powers to turn them into soldiers. But as the video kind of goes on, you learn that it's not working the way that they wanted it to. These are children, they're not soldiers, so they are rebelling. But then whatever this group is seems like they had achieved at whatever they were trying to do. So then they started like euthanizing the children. The woman who we met at the beginning of the movie helped sort of like helped a bunch of the children escape. They all got separated. She and Laura went one way. Presumably all the children went a different way. So we don't know at this point what happened to the children. But Logan knows that, okay, I need to figure out what to do here. Am I going to take Laura to meet up with these kids at this location that he's still not sure where it is? Or should I do my own thing and just buy the boat and we should get out of here? Um,
This is like after he finds out that Laura is like his biological daughter. It's his
Mhm.
DNA
Mhm.
that they used to make
Yeah.
her, which is why she is a scrappy little Wolverine.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
uh Professor X has a couple like good lines in here, like explaining Laura to Wolverine. Basically like explaining, you know, while you want to go out and fight stuff, she is going to fight stuff, but also protect. And he does like a cool explanation of like her claws on her hands are for fighting, the ones on her feet are for defending. And I was like, oh, that's a cool way to look at it because we really only see her use the one on her feet a couple times in the movie. And
Mhm.
most of the times it's when she's like being held by
Yeah.
somebody. She uses the one in her feet. So I was like, oh, that was like interesting that he said that. And that's kind of the only way we ever see her use her feet claws or defensively. Never really see her like attack with them. Um, this leads us to uh, Vegas. And again, this whole time they're being like pursued by the Reavers who have Caliban because they abandoned Caliban. Um, and the Reavers are using Caliban to track Wolverine and Laura and Professor X. Um, so it seems like they would have to know that, you know, but
Mhm.
that they don't seem to be doing anything about it other than just like continuing to run. Uh, while they're in Vegas, you know, there's another couple like sweet moments with like Professor X and Laura where they're like talking about the old Western movie. Um, Professor X and Logan have another couple conversations. Logan goes to get them a new car because the other car is destroyed to the point where he just like leaves it in an alley, which I thought was funny. Like he doesn't even sell it or
Yeah.
anything. He just like leaves it and is like, you guys can have this to like some biker gang in the alley. Um, the when he gets back to the hotel, then that's when all of a sudden Professor X is clearly having one of his seizures because Logan is being affected by it before you can even like get to the elevator. This is another one of those scenes that was like, wow, this is crazy. Like he's fighting through these psychic waves. It seems like Wolverine and I mean, once we see her, Laura are the only two that are able to
Mhm.
move when this is happening. It
Mhm.
doesn't seem like humans are able to move. So to your point earlier, Elisa, like maybe this is what happened to the X-Men, and the only
Mhm.
reason like Logan is still alive is because he's the only one that can like
Mhm.
live through this or move through this.
Yeah. Yeah. Or is it a mixture? Does like the adamantium help plus the fact that there's the self-healing?
Yeah, that's true. Because like I get that's like
Like,
Magneto's whole thing, right? Is like as long as you shield your mind
yeah.
with metal, then somehow that means you can't be
Mhm.
psychically.
Like I don't, yeah, wouldn't see Magneto getting killed off from this kind of event.
Mhm.
Um, but potentially, yeah, like if it's the waves are so powerful, it's like destroying like your organs or whatever, then yeah.
Well, the craziest part for me is Logan's like clawing his way up the stair or up the hallway, and then when he
Mm-hmm.
gets there, he's like killing these guys as he's walking past them, and they can't
Mm-hmm.
do anything about it. They see him coming, but they can't move. But then when he like stabs them into stuff, they
Yeah.
don't fall down. They're like still in
Yeah.
this suspended animation, which it was just like,
Well, and that kind of like mimics like Quicksilver, right? Like he can run
yeah,
around so
yeah.
fast, or he can move people's bodies, and it's like I'm wondering if they know that's happening, or it may be a little different because I don't know, like that, like the space time stuff of like you can move so fast that you can move someone's body, but it's going in a it's in a space where like they don't even know that until
Right.
He stops it, right?
Right. But this seems like they would know because like
But
we
this is
see them
like
like look at
you can
him.
see that they know, like they're terrified.
Yeah, but they can't
Like
move.
they know that this blade's going through my skull, but
Yeah. Nothing you could do about it.
that's wild.
Uh
Yeah, these moments were like crazy. I remember seeing these on the big theater, just like
hmm
this is nuts.
Yeah, it's such like a wild scene. Once they, once Logan's able to inject Professor X with whatever the medicine is that calms him down, they're able to escape solely because like everyone has been affected by this in the surrounding area. So like all the Reavers that are there have been
Mhm.
rendered essentially unconscious or like stunned. So they're able to escape once again. This leads us to probably like for me, I think like the saddest part in the movie. Um, they're driving. This is where we see those auto trucks. They get run off the road by an auto truck. They help some people whose horses got out. Professor X uses his mind powers, but controlled this time to like bring the horses back safely. Um, the family's like, "Oh, come stay with us. We'll give you food. Thanks for helping." Classic Wolverine doesn't want to, but uh, Professor X is like, "No, like let's do it." So they go, they eat. The people offer them that they can stay there for the night. Again, Wolverine is like, I really don't think we should. We should probably keep moving. I wonder what this movie would be like if they had kept moving instead.
Mhm.
But they end up staying. Wolverine
Well,
goes,
yeah, these kind of moments, if there's a breadcrumb trail, like I feel like with this family, it would have been the same fate.
yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, Wolverine goes to help the dad because their water got shut off. Um, Professor X is upstairs asleep in his bed, and Laura is hanging out with the family's son, who's like giving her an iPod to listen to. Um, Logan's dealing with the whole thing. There's like these farmers that are out there that are like, the water thing's on our land. You can't be here. He says one of my favorite lines in the movie, which he calls the guy an okie dickhead. I thought that was pretty funny. Uh, and basically just like punch the guy in the face, tells him to get out of here. Those guys run away. Then we see the Professor X. He's like laying in bed. Logan walks in the room. All we can kind of see is like his arm and his waist, maybe. Can't really see like his body. And Professor X has like a meaningful one-sided discussion with him. And then when we see who it is a young-ish Wolverine with a shaved head. And then he stabs Professor X in the chest and then kills the son of the family and then kills the mom. At
Mm.
this point, finally, Wolverine and the husband are back, or the dad are back. Then the dad gets knocked down pretty quick. And immediately you're just like, wow, like because they stayed here, Professor X is dead and this whole family is dead. Um, Laura gets captured. Wolverine again, like this is one of those moments, right, where you see the struggle. He didn't want to help with Laura's stuff to begin with. He just wanted to get the money to buy the boat so that he and Professor X could go live on the water. So when he finds Professor X and sees this younger version of himself carrying Laura away, he doesn't rush to help Laura. Instead, he rushes to help Professor X. And it seems like another one of those turning points where like you could see how I think the doctor mentions it maybe that like you can't breed this kind of hatred. You have to like train it or teach it, basically. And here's another one of those moments where it's like, yeah, Wolverine, like, you're helping them teach Laura to hate people, because like
Mhm.
you're not helping her at all. You clearly don't care about her. Not that I'm saying he shouldn't care about Professor X. You
Mhm.
know, that was like his whole life pretty much for however long they've been together. Um, but yeah, it's just really sad to see he like keeps telling Professor X like, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. And we've already heard Professor X mention that like sometimes he just doesn't recognize Wolverine, but he knows who he is. So it's like one of those things where if he saw the younger version, would he know who that is? Or would he be like, yeah, that's Wolverine? And like not recognize that it wasn't the Logan that he
Mhm.
knows? But also he can read minds, but I don't know what would be going through X-24's mind, because he's just like a mindless clone, basically.
Yeah, and Professor X is in, he's in such a bizarre state at this point. Like, is he even reading the minds, or does he comprehend? Because that's the other thing is like everyone, we're dealing with the old age mutants. Like,
Mm-hmm.
their powers are kind of wonky at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was like the hardest part of the movie for me, and I
Yeah,
always forget that all of this happens at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
Like in my mind, when I think of this movie, these things happen, but they're spread out. But it's like, no, they all
No,
happen at the
that's
exact
all.
same time. Um, yeah, it's really rough. He kind of has to like leave Professor X in the back of this truck because he has to go help Laura. Um, the X-24 young Wolverine is then, luckily, I guess, stopped before he gets to where he's dragging Laura, because the like crazy cowboy farmers that we met earlier are now here in force to, I guess, like attack Wolverine for punching their boss in the face. But they don't know that they're about to meet like young savage Wolverine who's going to kill them all. And here's another one of those moments where you're like, you know that it's rated R,
Hmm.
but it's so far it's been like gunshots and people getting stabbed. But here we go again. He walks up and like immediately cuts off a guy's head. And you're just
Mhm.
like, whoa, that's right. Oh, forgot that we're hyper violent. I didn't didn't remember. It's been a minute. Um, and then yeah, he basically just like goes on a rampage and starts killing all these people. Uh, the leader of the Reavers is like, hey, we should stop him. The doctor's like, yeah, go out there and stop him. And the Reaver's like, no, he only listens to you. And it's interesting because he doesn't have like a shock collar or any sort of technology. I guess it's just supposed to be like he only responds to this one guy's voice, which doesn't seem like a great idea to have your like mindless killing machine only listen to one person. But I guess, they're villains. They can't be the smartest people. Um, and so then he and Wolverine get into a scrap once the rest of the cowboy farmers run away. And oh, I almost forgot. This is where Caliban. We also lose Caliban,
Mhm.
who goes out in a blaze of glory. He has probably the best like one liner in the movie, where he is able to reach through the bars of the cage that he's in and grab a couple grenades, and he pops the grenades and tosses them at the feet of the Reavers and the like control truck they're in, and he just says, beware the light. And it's like, oh, and then it explodes, and you're like, oh, dang, he didn't make it. But that was a good line. Um, and once again, almost hobbling after the fight. Wolverine is able to like launch X-24 onto a branch and get him stuck there. And with the help of the dad who wasn't dead yet, and pulls out a shotgun and comes out there and starts shooting X-24 and then points the gun at Wolverine. And you're like, this is another one of those moments where it kind of hits you in a way where you're like, oh, like there's no way to explain to him what is happening. So he thinks that Logan was a part of this and his whole family is dead now. So he like cocks the gun one more time and points it at Logan. But when he pulls the trigger, there's no more bullets. And then that guy falls down and is dead as well. So we've lost like 10 people in like one scene. Um, Hobbling away, Logan is able to rescue Laura. As they're driving away, Laura sees that Professor X's body is in the back and she freaks out. Um, so it's just like another one of these really hard moments that they're having to deal with. And it just reminds you like this movie is not, it's not a Marvel movie. It's not a fun, happy-go-lucky, you're rooting for the good guys and everything's great. And even the hard parts, you're like, they're going to get through it. This is a movie of like hard part after hard part after hard part. You're just like, man, if they could just catch a break. They end up having to bury Professor X. It's a really like touching emotional scene where Wolverine is, trying to say a few words. He can't get the words out. Laura comes over and holds his wrist. But, he's Wolverine, so he's mad, pulls away, tries to start the car, doesn't start. Then he goes to just like beating the car with a shovel, which again, like, it's all such an emotional scene that the first time you watch it, just like Elisa, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on everything that's happened in this like 10-minute part of the movie. But watching it the first time, it's such like a hard emotional scene. Watching it the second time, it was like, man, all that stuff's really sad. And then as soon as he starts beating on the truck with the shovel, it's a little funny because it's like there's a moment where he swings and he hits the side mirror, and I think he was like thought that it was going to break off, but it didn't. So then he's going to hit something else on the car and stops and then goes back to try to hit the thing again and like misses and then falls on the ground, which like maybe all that was planned. I don't know. But it seemed like a moment of like he was out there beating on that car for like 10 minutes in the sun, and then he was just like tired from doing that. So to be funny, he maybe collapsed and laid on the ground. And then they were like, that's good. Like, let's do that. um, but yeah, so to rewind a little bit to all this going on, Elisa, what was it? What was it like for your first time?
Well, obviously, I was really sad about what happened to the family because they were just nice and cool and invited them over for dinner. And they had to make it worse by having Professor X keep mentioning to Logan, like, this is what it's like to have a home and a family. Just kind of absorb that feeling and think about what it would be like for you if you let yourself have this. And so, like, that just made it worse whenever that got taken away from all of them. Like, they had just started to form this kind of friendship. Um, and like totally innocent people murdered by this fake Wolverine. And then the car beating up scene. What I kept thinking was, this is not an effective way to process your emotions. This is not productive. This is bad for the car. Y'all need that car. And of course, we also know that this led to him basically being like further injured. Like he's already been hurt really badly, and doing this took it out of him even worse. So it was a very bad idea all the way around. But I think that all of the connections that Laura tries to make with him throughout the movie are so sweet.
Yeah, their relationship that they build through the movie is really nice. Um, it seems like it I wish that it started earlier. Like I wish their nice to each other relationship started earlier. It feels like all of that happened in the last like final act of the movie. And it's like, man, I really wanted more like him and Laura like bonding over something. But who knows? Maybe she'll show back up in Deadpool 3.
Yeah, that was like the other struggle. It's like this the bulk of the story just felt a little too generic, like we've seen before. It's just Logan's got his thing that he's trying to get to, and things get in your way, and then it basically becomes like you got to now get from point A to point B. I'm stuck with you. I need to take you to where you need to go so I can go do my thing.
Mm. Yeah, and this kind of goes back to like, so at this by this point he's seen the comic books. He knows, like he's explained that like the comics were written by people that heard like part of the story and made up the rest. So we're in this universe where X-Men comics exist, but really they're written about real people and then embellished. So
Yeah.
he finds out where they're supposed to be going. He's trying to explain to Laura that like that doesn't exist. But it seems like he's saying it doesn't exist. She's like, it does. She, well, she steals
it's
it.
one
Go
yeah, it's
ahead.
one of these again, it's one of these moments where like, look, this is too good to be true.
Mhm.
It more than likely doesn't exist. Like, don't hold your hopes up.
Mhm.
It's a hope thing, right? It's like she believes like, this is here, it's meant for us. This is where we need to be. It's almost like in my gut, it's like we have to be here. Like this is our purpose. We need to make it here. And Logan's just kind of he's been through it all, right? He's just like, don't give me hope. Like it probably doesn't exist. Look at the world that we're in right now. Like who's left? No one's left.
Right. Yeah, and
That's
like,
that's the other side. The whole thing with X-Men has always been that political factor, right? It's like humans versus mutants, and there's not really that much of that here. It's
mhm.
there are some mutants around, and it seems now like they're known enough to where they're kind of like popular celebrities figures versus like the fear that mutants are going to take over everything.
Right. Which is also interesting that like there's comics, so people maybe idolize them at one point,
Yeah.
but then also there's like this government agency that's wiping them out. You would think that there would be maybe more mention of some sort of like, are there humans that are standing up for mutants too? Or are we supposed to
Right.
believe that like all humans turned on mutants?
Right. It's kind of what you get in like um Batman v Superman, right? Like there
Mm-hmm.
you got the side that's like idolizing Superman and wants Superman to be there versus the other one that's like, nope, get him out of here.
Right.
You don't get there's not as much of that anymore.
Right. Yeah, this seems more like you said earlier, like people know who Wolverine is. People are like, "Oh, hey, you're the Wolverine, right?" But people don't
And
seem to
maybe
care so much like
yeah,
what's he up to? What's he
maybe
doing?
it's just the impact of like the media over everyone, right? Like these
Mm-hmm.
comic series come out, they get engrossed in it, and they're thinking like all of these stories probably happen in some way, and maybe the mutants actually are superheroes and we shouldn't fear them. And then yeah, it transforms them to becoming this like celebrity idol like figure.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone goes on about their way, and behind the scenes, like all the mutants are dying.
Right.
And it's almost like you'd think, would they care? Like,
Right.
are they idolized enough to like, why is this happening? And like maybe humans are the bad guys and we need to stop this.
Right.
Like there can be a world with mutants and humans.
But it's interesting because then we get, so like the very next scene, so he falls down, passes out. When he wakes up, he's in like a doctor's office. And a guy comes in and is basically like, hey, like you're not doing too well. We should get you to a hospital. I think there's something in you that's like poisoning you. This is the part that I was mentioning at the beginning. And then he's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know what's in me. And so like that's the kind of nod to like, yeah, he's got adamantium poisoning. That's why he's not healing.
Mhm.
Um, but this guy doesn't seem to know who he is.
Yeah, yeah.
He knows he's a mutant though, because he says like, "I've never thought I'd get to meet one of y'all's kind here."
Right. So like clearly knows that he's like healing quickly.
Ish.
Right. But he doesn't seem to like say like I know you're Wolverine.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Um
Yeah, I wonder if it's just like, yeah, again, this goes back to like how quickly did a lot of mutants just die off, right? It's
mhm,
like, was there a specific event or multiple events that killed off most of the mutants? And then maybe people are just kind of like, okay, maybe there's mutants around, maybe, and they just
right.
don't care anymore. So it's one of those things of like, yeah, it's like walking down that, like you go into New York City, like you would think you would walk into a famous celebrity, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 I just feel I don't know. I feel like we should have seen somebody else.
Yeah.
Uh but to kind of
Or was Mystique around the whole time? We just never knew.
yeah, how many people had yellow eyes?
Yeah.
Uh the basically what happens is Logan, he walks out, he finds out that Laura has stolen this car. He's not jazzed that she stole the car, but also kind of happy they have a car.
Yeah.
Uh he is driving her to the destination that they're supposed to meet at, but the whole time he's telling her like don't get excited, it's fake, it doesn't exist. They get there, surprise, it sort of exists. um they see all the kids that Laura's been trying to get back connected to.
Hmm.
So Logan passes out again. The kids help raise him up this hillside to this like overlooked tower. uh while he's asleep, they shave his beard and mustache back into his Wolverine chops.
Classic look.
Yeah. It's very interesting how close of a shave they're able to get with scissors while they're giggling and he's sleeping, but
Yeah.
we'll let it slide. Uh, while we're here, we see like, these are definitely mutants, all these kids. They have varying powers. I don't know that we're supposed to really like tie anyone to any particular mutant other than Laura. They
Hmm.
do have, similar powers to some people we know, but it doesn't really seem like it's 100% the same. So, um, while they're up here, he passes out again. When he wakes up, he's like, how long have you been asleep? They're like, 2 days. We got to go. And he's like, man, 2 days is a long time. There's potential that the Reavers have caught up to us. Like, let's, you know, you guys got to get moving. So the plan is these kids are basically just going to run through the woods to get to the border. That's the plan. End of plan. Uh,
Run.
yeah.
Just run.
As they're making their way through the woods, the Reavers show up, surprise, and start trying to like take down all these kids and trap them. Which is interesting that they're trying to trap them since before their plan was to kill them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they should try to kill them in the movie, but it just feels like they would be trying to kill them, not trying to capture them. It seems like Laura's the only one that they're trying to capture, really.
Hmm.
Um, we get to see a couple of the kids use their powers. There's a kid that can like blow ice breath. There's another one that can like electrocute stuff. During this whole scene, uh, there's also just like a bunch of Reavers that Laura is having to deal with. Wolverine hears the struggle. He's coming to help, but his healing is not working as well. So he takes a vial of basically like mutant genome that he steals earlier in the movie.
Or
So
I thought Richter gave it to him.
is that? Yeah, yes, you're right. when he was
Yeah.
telling him like, yeah. So he has this mutant genome. It basically is going to like give him a boost of energy, and it's going to like boost his healing factor for a short amount of time. So he takes that. He's able to do his thing, his Wolverine thing, where he screams as he runs through the woods with his claws out. And then there's like a crazy fight scene where he and Laura are battling everybody. Um, the head Reaver gets, you know, he's sort of the last one left, other than X-24. And he has like the best death, I guess, in the whole movie, where all of the kids like use their powers at one time against him, which is cool. Except if you watch the scene, it kind of seemed like whatever kid can control the grass is really the only kid doing anything. Like the other ones are doing stuff, but it doesn't really look like anything is happening. It's really all you see is the grass growing over him. So go grass kid. Uh, Wolverine, while they were up in the tower, did have a discussion with Laura about why he keeps the adamantium bullet. He keeps it to kind of like remember where he came from, but also potentially shoot himself in the head to kill himself. Interesting, because he's already been shot in the head by an adamantium bullet and it did not kill him. So I don't know why he thinks this one would. I guess he doesn't remember that first one. So I don't know.
That is one of the reasons why Mason has a bit of a problem with this movie. Because he's like, Logan has been shot in the head with an adamantium bullet and he was fine. There's not a reason for him to think, except for, he is losing his healing ability, but there's not a reason especially to think that it would be effective in the other instance in which we're about to see it be used. So he's like, that doesn't make any sense unless this isn't canon with, that was X-Men Origins, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But of course he's like, but that's the thing. None of these movies are canon with each other. You can only be certain that the only movie that's canon is the one that you're watching. We don't know how it's connected to any of the others.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of how does this work, it's down to X-24 and Wolverine duking it out. X-24 in a similar fashion to what Wolverine did to him earlier by impaling him on the stick, impales Wolverine on an upturned root. And before he can land what seems to be a finishing blow, Laura runs over, loads the adamantium bullet into a gun that's on the ground, and shoots X-24 in the head, which like destroys his head, sort of most of his head, and kills him. Does it make sense?
No.
I don't think so, but
it also goes like,
okay.
how do you know that bullet will work in that gun?
Yeah. We don't.
And maybe it was, I can't remember. Like I didn't catch back up to that part. But that's like the common thread in most movies. It's where like, yeah, I've got this bullet and here's a gun. But does that bullet go with that gun? Like
right. And also like the reason the adamantium bullet affects Wolverine the way that it does in his brain is because when he got shot in there, it got stuck in there, and there's no way to get it out because his skull is coated in adamantium. Are we supposed to believe that X-24 is also coated in adamantium? Because if so, how did the bullet blow like half of his head apart and it didn't regenerate? Like, I don't 100% explain that. I wish they could have been like,
well,
maybe...
and okay, yeah, I wanted to like ask this question in the last episode because we kind of get into like some of the moments that Wolverine has and regenerates. But do either of you watch The Boys?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so Kamiko.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are you caught up?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the scene that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where she's basically like cut completely in half, but is still able to regenerate, and like she's cut in half, but like her organs aren't. So she's like still pulling her body together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can Wolverine do that?
Well, that's always been my question. There's a series, a comic series where the Wolverine and Hulk fight each other, and Hulk rips Wolverine in half and throws one half one way and another half the other direction, and they go for like miles.
Yeah.
And I've always thought like, okay, so the the way that it works in that comic is Wolverine eventually like grows a bottom half.
Yeah.
But do the legs grow a top half?
A top. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
how do
Did
you
he make
decide?
two Wolverines?
Yeah, like how do you decide which part of you is the part that regenerates
Well,
the
it's
other part?
like, yeah, I mean, if you watch The Boys, and sorry, spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched The Boys, check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. It is extremely intense, but there is a character that can regenerate body parts. But yeah, it's like she loses like limbs throughout the season. And you
Mhm.
can see that her bot like the core of her body will regrow like an arm or whatever. But yeah, would the arm regrow everything else?
Yeah, it's a little iffy.
Yeah.
So I don't
It seems
know.
like whatever maybe is whatever attached to like the heart of the brain, like that's it. Like the other, if like anything that's gone
Right.
would just,
So it's
you
funny,
know.
I literally just had this conversation today with my friend at work. In the Wolverine X-Men Origins video game, the way that
Mhm.
they work his healing factor into the game is that you can get shot and cut and all this stuff throughout the whole game and it damages you, but it all grows back. The way that it damages you is it like the more damage you take, the harder his heart works. And if you get to the
Mm.
point where his heart overworks, he dies in
Mm.
game.
Gotcha.
This mirrors a little bit the Wolverine, where the thing that's affecting his healing factor is this little tentacle robot
Hmm.
that's attached to his heart. So are we
Yeah.
supposed to think that his heart is maybe the core of his healing factor?
Hmm.
But then
Maybe.
that doesn't 100% work with comic lore where there are parts where like his head is cut off from his body and he's still alive and his head regrows a body and it's like, well, so then does his heart not have anything to do with it? Nah, I get it's a
Make it
comic, but
just make it make
yeah,
sense.
just pick one
Pick
lane
one
and
and go
stick
with
with
it.
it.
The only theory I have about how X-24 could have survived this is because he is still technically like a baby. And they show earlier on he gets pretty messed up in that earlier fight whenever everybody else died. It's like they have to bring him like the mutant go-go juice to help him start healing up. And I was thinking, our Logan would have healed from that much more quickly without any aids in these previous movies. He would have been fine within just a few seconds. So maybe X-24 is still kind of developing his powers. So
Yeah.
he can't survive the adamantium bullet when regular Logan at peak power could have.
Here we go. I got it.
Oh, go for it.
I got it. X-24 does not die. He regenerates, and now he's just basically all alone. So at this point, if no one's commanding him or controlling him, he can just go off and live a life, I guess. This becomes the Wolverine that we see in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Wow, what a
That's a
twist.
major stretch. That's not going to happen at all, I don't think. But what if that is the version, it's actually X-24 that becomes Old Man Logan that meets Deadpool.
That would be
Huge.
crazy.
I mean, that would be wild. I don't expect that to happen at all, but
But if it does happen, you heard it here first,
you heard it here
folks.
first.
Well,
Um yeah, I would be curious though if we're gonna see like yeah, I mean, everyone wants to see X-23 and Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm it's got to happen. But at the same time, is X-24 going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine or maybe
right.
mentioned?
Well, and is X-23 going to show up in any other Marvel properties?
Yeah, right.
There's like fan hopes that she's going to show up in like Young Avengers, but maybe
Hmm.
not. I don't know. I hate to rush this last part of the movie, but we are running out of time. Uh, Wolverine, still impaled. X-23 goes over and cuts loose the branches to lay him down. He has like a tender moment with her, basically like go live your life, be happy, be safe. And then he dies and she buries him and we see the like classic mound of dirt with the branches that make an X on top of the mound of dirt, which is what we see in Deadpool 2, I think.
Yeah.
As like a nod to this. So
Hmm.
that's that's how the movie ends. There's no mid-credit scene, there's no post-credit scene, there's no end
It's
credit
like you would,
scene.
yeah.
That's
I mean, you would think they would have like post credit back to that mound of dirt like sometime in the future, and then you see like the dirt like push up or something.
yeah, I mean that's definitely what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah.
But this was also supposed to be his last go at Wolverine. Uh, so nobody expected Deadpool 3 to be like, oh, we're gonna revive Wolverine. So they
I could just see like Ryan Reynolds, she's watching this, watching Logan, and just be like, "No, I'm bringing you back. Like, this is
yeah,
not the way.
100%.
This is
Because
not the way."
I think where we see it in Deadpool 2 is like, is it a post-credit scene? And it's literally like him
Uh,
walking up to the mound of dirt with the X, and then he pulls out a shovel.
I can't. I have to rewatch. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get there,
Well,
but
yeah, that's on
now
our list
I'm
before.
also rethinking like from the Wolverine, like she's like, "I can see your death, like you're laying down, holding your heart."
Hmm.
I mean, this he was
It's
like
supposed to be
laying,
like he's on his back and he's got
yeah.
her in his hand,
Hmm.
sort of. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Mm.
okay, a loose interpretation of
Yeah.
but overall, it's definitely a great movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it and then come back and listen to this episode. How did you get here? Um,
But please tell us, how did you get here?
yeah,
We'd really like to know.
yeah, let us know. Uh, and also, what are you doing here? Go watch the movie. Um,
And when you're
but
done, watch Deadpool and then Deadpool 2.
yeah, and then listen to us again, and we'll talk about those. Uh, but yeah, overall, I think it's definitely up there as like one of the top uh just like superhero movies, period. It's definitely probably the best of the X-Men movies. Nostalgia aside,
Mhm.
I think, everyone's gonna have their, I love X2. I watched that movie to death as a kid, so it's probably my number one, but I also recognize that this is a
Yeah.
better movie than that.
I've
Um,
probably watched X2 more than I've watched Logan. Man, Logan's something. It's special.
our question last week was, well, we had two. Um, Well, are we going to see the yellow suit? I think was the secondary question.
Oh, like yeah, basically the suit that he's given at the end of the extended cut of the Wolverine.
Yeah, the yellow and
Could
brown.
we actually? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's just like the question is like how is Deadpool going to actually get connected with Logan right away? I
Hmm.
feel like it's got to be like classic Logan, like sitting at a bar or something like that.
Hmm.
But it also it's like how does he have the suit that he has on? Is it like some nanotech thing and it just like he just kind of uses that it goes over his body,
Right.
or will we get a moment where he's in that classic? I mean,
Right.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a
But
question of, since we know there's going to be
yeah.
different timelines, are we going to see different Logans? Because if so,
Hmm.
then we'll definitely see it.
Yeah.
I think if that's not the case and
Right.
we're only going to see the one, then I would see
Well,
them doing it as a joke where they just have the suit in the background somewhere,
yeah.
but no one's actually wearing
Yeah.
it.
It's like are we potentially having this moment with Patch. Um,
I forgot all about Patch.
yeah, from like the first trailer. Because it's like that could be Daniel Radcliffe, maybe. Um, yeah, we haven't revisited those theories in a minute, but yeah. Yeah, I could see it like maybe they're walking through this. Maybe we get to actually go through Xavier's school and they're walking through like the X-Men areas and we see like all the classic suits and that's where we see it.
That'd be pretty cool.
Maybe Deadpool's like, dude, right, put it on right here. He's just like, that's the old one. I get the new one.
That'd be
It's like
fun.
Tony. It'd be funny if you just like Tony sent these over.
Yeah, he just has like a whole stack of them.
Yeah.
Uh, that'd be fun.
Maybe
Unfortunately,
it's the helmet. Maybe that's what it is. It's like he puts on like
just the yellow and
like
brown
the
helmet.
his the Wolverine cowl, and it's the nano suit that just forms over his body.
Oh man.
You
Well,
can't tell. We're very excited to
yeah,
see
there's
this.
too many things that could possibly happen, and only one is going to happen. And I'm at this point, we've seen so many trailers that are all
And
slightly different.
yeah,
It's like,
and they
can I
just put out
just
another one, and at this point, I'm kind of like, you kind of need to stop. I feel like if you keep putting more and more of these
yeah,
out, you're basically going to give us the entire movie.
yeah, 100%. Um, but any final thoughts on Logan before we?
Mason says the search for a good X-Men movie still continues because he does not consider this to be an X-Men movie. And also because he
Yeah,
said, I know it's good, I just didn't like it.
yeah,
Okay, I mean,
okay, that's
everyone
fair.
can have yeah,
That's
valid
fair.
points, valid points.
Yeah, I mean, to that, yeah, this is steers away from like the core X-Men. Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, I do wish they would have held tighter to like a comic storyline.
Hmm.
But for what they provided us, I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is like solid, like 4.5 out of 5 claws.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is definitely the oldest of the Old Man Logans. You know, 10 out of 10 shotgun wounds to the chest. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that we
Mhm.
get to watch it again. Elisa, your final thoughts on your first time?
I actually did think it was good. I thought it did qualify as a good X-Men movie, although its credentials as an X-Men movie might be somewhat debated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did enjoy it. Thought it was very well done. Um, and like I said at the beginning, don't know if I'll watch it a whole lot, but it was very good.
All right, you heard it here. 3 out of 3 votes for go watch this movie if you haven't. Uh, thank you guys for listening this week. Join us next week as we continue our watch through of the X-Men Legacy movies before the release of Deadpool 3. And, maybe we'll have more Deadpool 3 theories floating about from the next movie. So we will see you all next week.
Bye.